Thank you so
Yeah,
much for being here.
it's my pleasure. Yeah, I am thrilled. I'm really thrilled. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
Okay, hello, welcome, friends. You all missed my official fangirling, but
You had a private
I
fangirling
am
session. Ayo.
totally freaking out right now. Like, I cannot. Y'all know. So welcome, friends. I know there are a couple other folks that are registered, and I know this group was going to be really excited for this author appearance at WTF Book Club. Raylan is going to run the show in many ways today, so just giving folks the heads up to that. And Raylan also found a poem for grounding. So Raylan will share grounding. I'll share a poem I found, and then we'll just get right into the conversation.
Hi, friends. We're gonna try to see if the actual sound for the poem will play. If not, I will read it. The voice of diaspora. Can y'all hear that? I wake up and realize I'm dirty. The years of subservience pouring from me, the thousands of uncertainties mixed into my skin that relinquish and distinguish and don't even extinguish the cost of this diseased knowledge, this ivory speech. It targets my soul. It was given to me as a legacy. It restrains me, challenging me to challenge it. Insists in keep his sovereignty, insists for me to dethrone it, work on its behalf alone. From the ages of a fractured world, it presents us the venom and the antidote as evil things to have within the same body. But I am diaspora, and also colony, made of love and ammonia, carrying insomnia and slumber through all the sleepless years. Then I arise from every unjust dream, from every bad unclean, on a quest to spawn from those who dominate their worst nightmare, not revenge, but disdain. This sickness is static, emphatic. It ravages those words apathetic, and it's what stains me, and it's what pushes me to the cure, and it's what fuels the pursuit for what's undivided, for what's diluted, for a way to break the cycle and stop this master-slave logic. But to do so is necessary to immerse in this wasted state. Look through the past mistakes, change the game, accept the fact that it's not a sin to carry many. And I will also share the poem in the chat.
Thank you, Raylan. Loved hearing it in the author's voice. Um, so I was gifted when Raylan and I went to visit the Midwest Farmers of Color group. I was gifted this book, The Eternal Life of Audre Lorde, Survival is a Promise. Um, and Audre Lorde, come on. But I was telling Professor McInnis that I'm like you all know how much of a nerd I am. You know how like books are whenever I'm saying like I was communing with the ancestors, like I mean I was reading historical texts, right? Like everyone knows that I like all of my spirituality is like rooted in books. And this book in particular had so many, there were moments when I was reading it I had to like put it down because it felt like such a portal. And one thing about it was when I was a child and I attended an African American, not integrated elementary school in Orlando, Florida, and they always gave me Marcus Garvey for Black History Month. And I was always like, why are they giving me Marcus Garvey? This is like so annoying because I wanted to be like, I wanted to like, I wanted to be African American like everyone else. Um, and as I've matured, and so I really, really love Marcus Garvey and everything that he represents, and just the way that this book really put into language how I see us as Black, as Afro-Indigenous peoples, and what the challenge is that we're working on in this moment, with this legacy on our shoulders. I was really thinking about Audre Lorde, and so I found this really, really short passage, and she says, I mean, none of us is going to move the earth 1 millimeter from its axis. But if we do what we need to be doing, then we will leave something that continues beyond ourselves, and that is survival.
Hmm.
Ooh, what a time. It's going to be a joy. First things first, I'm going to introduce Professor McInnis. I will give y'all a little um, introductory, and then we're going to reverse it from how we normally do. So question and answer will be first, because I know people got questions. And then if we hit a lull in conversation, then I can fill in with some of those things that I pre-screened. But I want to give y'all a chance to nerd out and do all the things. So first and foremost, I am so honored to announce that we have Professor Jarvis C. McInnis, an associate professor of English at Duke University. He's a proud summa cum laude graduate of Tougaloo College in Tougaloo, Mississippi, where he earned a BA in English, and Columbia University in the city of New York, where he earned a PhD in English and Comparative Literature. Dr. McInnis is an interdisciplinary scholar of African American and African diasporic literature and culture, with teaching and research interests in the global South, primarily in the U.S. South and the Caribbean, Black geographies and ecologies, Southern sound studies, and visual culture, and the archives. And we are a big, big, big fan of ancestors and community here, so he is also the son of Pamela and Harry McInnis. I'm going to open it up asking you just a question, and by then everybody else can fill in, and if not, we'll keep going from there. So, what elements of Tuskegee University's early educational design, curriculum, governance, their community embeddedness, most clearly demonstrates that break from white institutional models? What did it mean to educate Black folks in predominantly rural areas, and how does that reflect in the function of HBCUs today?
Wow.
Yeah.
I know.
We're just gonna jump right in. Well, before I answer your question, which is a great question, by the way, Raylan, I just want to say thank you to Raylan for the invitation, and to Dania as well for the invitation. Of course, to Savi Horn, who was in conversation with me about my book, and it was just an honor to be in conversation with you, Savi. And thank you. I've learned that Dania is one of the people who you gifted a copy of my book to when you traveled to Jamaica. So, everything is coming full circle. So just thank you all for your interest in the work, for your engagement with the work. I am honored and just really excited to be here today. So I just wanted to begin with my own thank yous. And so I guess I'll pivot to your question, Raylan, which is a really important one. And I think that if I'm understanding it correctly, it's, what is sort of distinct about the Tuskegee model, and what about that model can we sort of bring forward to today? Is that right? The kind of two components of the question.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think what is so distinctive about it, and I really try to lay this out in the book in a very in a careful way, is that Tuskegee is invested with this ethic of care for um, poor rural Black folk in the late 19th or early 20th century who don't have access to formal education, right? And so for them, I think what I was struck by, especially also as like an HBCU graduate, is um, someone who was is a part of that sort of HBCU legacy, wherein it was really important that, at a place like Tougaloo accepted students with all kinds of different preparation, right? So you had your students who were your, valedictorians of their class, right? But also students who may have really struggled in high school, and they really invested in ensuring that if those students who may have struggled in high school got to Tougaloo, that they would provide the resources for them to excel at that institution. And so I think I was really struck by Tuskegee's commitment to democratizing and disseminating knowledge,
Mhm.
agricultural knowledge in particular. And it just seemed that they were doing this in a way that was so comprehensive, right? And so, they were doing it in a way that was about, not only bringing um, poor rural, some of them poor, but we'll just say rural, right? They were probably across class backgrounds, but I was struck by their commitment to poor rural Black folks, bringing them to campus to educate them via the Tuskegee Negro Farmers Conference that started in 1892, wherein the farmers immediately in the immediate vicinity around Tuskegee, but later on they came from surrounding states as well. They would come to Tuskegee for like a 2 or 3 day conference, and they would learn all about the up-to-date models, well, excuse me, methods of agricultural cultivation. They would share their successes. That's right, it's still going. I think they're in their 133rd or 134th year, something like that. And so I was struck by this desire to bring them to campus because they recognized that not everybody could have access to formal education. Not everyone could. Some of them were formerly enslaved themselves. Some of them were, sort of parents and had other sort of familial obligations that would not allow them to go to school. And so they brought them to campus to educate them, but then they also took the education to them, right, through the Jessup agricultural wagon. And so they're taking this agricultural knowledge into the countryside and engaging in all of these demonstrations, but they're also creating this vast print culture, right? Newspapers and agricultural bulletins and magazines, and right, to ensure that whoever they couldn't reach physically, right, that through the print cultural network they could reach them that way as well. And of course, then you have the students, right, who are taking the Tuskegee vision into the various parts of the Black world, right, both U.S. and in other parts of the diaspora. And so I was just really heartened by this model again of democratizing this knowledge and disseminating it. And I think what I'll say lastly for now, um, perhaps lastly for now, is that what was so significant about it too was, and when I talk about a kind of ethic of care, was someone like George Washington Carver's desire to ensure that all of this information was written in a way that farmers with different levels of literacy could actually access it, right? He was like, listen, I don't want to write this. It's not useful to produce this knowledge in sort of academies, right? Or in very technical jargon. If it's gonna be useful for people, we have to write it in a way that they can access. And they did little things like in the Negro Farmer and Messenger newspaper or magazine, they would have like a farmer's dictionary, and then they would define words like mulch and composting and sort of, technical jargon or like that people should know, and that they to help educate them. And I think that, and Carver also would draw diagrams as well, because I think they understood that again, a lot of these Black farmers would have had uneven literacies, and so perhaps the visual would be as effective or more effective in sort of teaching the principles that he was trying to impress upon farmers, as well as the literary or the actual writing. I'm sorry, I think either someone is cutting my grass or Or I don't know if you can hear it. Are you all, can you all hear me okay? Okay, okay, great, awesome. Someone is either cutting my grass or the grass beside mine, so I wasn't sure if you all were getting all that feedback. But yeah, so I think that whether it is to kind of come back to the question of like, I think all of these are really practical strategies that we can use today. And I see that Land and Liberation is actually doing a lot of this work in terms of knowledge dissemination, right? And democratization. And so I think that that is a principle that we need to, obviously hold on to. But I also think that, as I argue in the book, that at a place like Tuskegee, I argue that it's both a model and a cautionary tale, right? Because of as much as we're engaged in this ethic of care, there's also this paternalism happening, right? And so those of us who are sort of in positions of privilege and power, who've had access to formal education, have to be very careful about how we enter into our communities and build with the very people that we aim to help. I think that, I saw examples in the archive of, again, sort of some horizontal engagements with the Black community or Black communities. But I saw a lot of vertical and sort of hierarchical structures at a place like Tuskegee as well. And so I think that really being critical of and thoughtful about our own positionalities. Just because we have this sort of access to a certain kind of knowledge doesn't mean that we can determine other people's futures, right? It's about being at the table and having a horizontal conversation and not one that is top down. Always respecting people's autonomy, always respecting people's uh, um, uh, sort of the the knowledge that they may bring to the table that we may not have either, right? I think that's so important. So I'll stop there for now.
Ooh, I have no words. Anybody else want to start us off with another question? If somebody just hops on, you can hop on, and then after that, raise your hands, and we'll go that way. And trust me, if you hit a lull, I have plenty of things, so don't worry about it.
Say less, Raylan. I have notes that I wrote down in the book of questions. Like in real time, as we're talking about rebuilding in Jamaica, my
Yeah.
family is from a part of the country that is a subsistence farming community.
Mhm.
It's a community that is in one of the areas that were a part of the treaties between the Maroons and the British
Oh,
Crown.
yeah. Mhm.
And there's an invitation in this moment around the diaspora. I'm a part of this. I'm a part of the
Mhm.
diaspora thinking about what this reconstruction for Jamaica can look like. And one of the things that really struck me over and over in the book was when you spoke about racial uplift, because
Mhm.
I think that the ways in which I've thought about it historically were just so positive. And that's why when you just
Mhm.
said the cautionary tale, like
Yeah.
your writing really teased out a there for me that I didn't realize was there.
Mhm.
And it's something that I wondered several times that you spoke about Booker T. Washington specifically.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
how did you really feel about him? Like it just felt like I was like, there's something there that
Yeah.
I'm just so curious
Yeah.
as you were sitting with the archives.
Yeah.
Um, how did you feel about him?
Wow.
That is such a good question.
You redeemed him, Jarvis. You redeemed him.
Thank you, Savi. Thank you. I appreciate that. He's a very difficult figure, as I say
Yes.
a few times throughout the book, and I wrestled with him. I think when I first started the project, I had hoped that I would find something that would um, uh, maybe demonstrate to other people that they had somehow gotten him wrong. And I realized that actually they hadn't gotten him wrong per se, that he was as difficult as people said he was, but I felt that they had reduced him to that difficulty and that we had not given enough space to the other parts of Tuskegee's archive that I highlighted in the book, particularly around this sort of ethic of care and the dissemination of knowledge and so forth and so on, but also that we hadn't given enough thought really to what Tuskegee enabled for the rest of the Black diaspora. So, yes, we have this complicated figure, but how is it that the institution, the tools, the resources, right, that this person was able to acquire in all of his difficulty, how did that still do really, really important work that we can't sort of just throw the baby, we can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have to acknowledge that without this institution or without these resources, I mean, they're doing things like, creating a farmer's, a loan bank for farmers, right? And they're loaning out stud animals, and they're, giving seed so people can grow healthy foods, and they're giving seed so people can grow beautiful flowers, chrysanthemums in particular, right? And it was like, well, if they're doing this type of work, if they're not there doing the work, then there's a void there, right? And so if we throw him out, if we throw out, and by extension, this institution, then we lose a lot, right? And so I needed to figure out a way to offer what I hope is a more balanced portrait of this person that doesn't shy away from the complexities and also the limits of his political vision, but at the same time tries to amplify the parts that we haven't seen. And so to be both critical and generous, I think is my right. And I have to say, Dania, there were times when I was in the archive, or times when I was writing, and I was just like, you were making this really hard. You talk about communing with the ancestors when you were
Yes.
reading the
Yes.
archive. I'm like, man,
Yes.
why did you say it that way?
Yes.
You are making this really, really difficult for me. But ultimately, I found that it was actually more generative. I'm glad that I didn't find something, not that I could have. I mean, there are many, brilliant people who've taken on Washington and Tuskegee before me. But I'm glad that I didn't find something that like kind of, vindicates, him, because I think that that's not the reality of our lives. It's not the reality of the historical figures that we read and learn about. They're complex, they're contradictory, right? And so we have to, instead of engaging in a kind of hagiography or a kind of veneration, right, we want to hold up the things that they gave us that's like really useful for us to hold on to, and reject or adapt, right, those things that are not useful for us, right? And so that ultimately was my approach to, Washington. I found him to be fascinating and frustrating, right, at the same time. And that probably is why you were, when you walked away from the book, was like, how did he really feel? I feel both fascinated and grateful for this, for the work that Tuskegee did, but also, immensely frustrated. But also, I think if I had to put another word, attach another word to it, I felt, um, I don't know, I had a great deal of, maybe I would say like grace. I felt like I needed to extend grace because I felt like I did not really understand the conditions fully of what it meant to have been an enslaved person trying to figure out at the at the precipice of freedom how to come up with the project that could be most liberatory, right? Under those conditions. Now, does that mean that Washington could not have made different choices? That's not what I'm saying at all. But I understand that that when you're responding to a moment as difficult as that moment, you're going to make some missteps, right? And so I think I also just had to approach the archive in this figure with a bit of grace and recognize that writing from the 21st century, I've also gleaned a lot from the mistakes that past generations have made. And I can look at Tuskegee and say, okay,
Mhm.
this is not decolonial enough,
Mhm.
right? Right. This is it's a start, but it doesn't take us far enough. But I only know that because I have I have the benefit of having been born at a later time, right? And so there are all these other experiments in Black freedom that I'm able to draw on and say, oh, okay, well, if Tuskegeans had known this, but they may not have had that information at that time, right? So I think in addition to fascination and frustration, a bit of grace in terms of how I wanted to engage both the figure and the institution.
I just want to thank you so much. It came across like
Mhm.
you just that's exactly what I was picking up. Your writing just really
Mhm.
clearly communicated that
Thank you.
you had love for the good of his legacy,
Right.
and but you weren't glamorizing aspects of it. And for me in this moment, the way that cancel culture, we just haven't had a good role model of what
Yeah.
it looks like for any of the modern movement leaders if there's a misstep to be given any grace. And I thought you did such a good job giving a role model of you can feel both things and not cancel
That's right.
someone. So
That's
thank you
right.
so much
That's
for
right.
that.
Thank you. That's a great, yes. Thank you. Thank you.
Um, I mean, I just am thinking about when you put Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois
Hmm.
side by side. And I think in many regards, you looking at these two figures and what they were contending with in their time, in their place,
Right.
and how they needed to riff so that the survival
Hmm.
of Black folk and our knowledge and our land and our agriculture tradition um, remain at center,
That's right.
right? When you look at Du Bois and the soul of Black folk and his recognition of agriculture, I think for me that helped him to really appreciate. He never did say it,
Right. Right.
Booker T. Washington,
Right.
and I feel grateful for you to uh, deal with the subtlety
Yeah.
and understanding that while Du Bois had his validity and
Yeah.
had a vision
Yeah.
and and a good vision
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
same time. We
Mhm.
needed to get to that vision,
That's right.
but Washington rooted it in the practicality of where Black
Mhm.
folk were.
That's
It
right.
was not an intellectual exercise.
Right.
This is where my people are, and this
Hmm.
is what I have to do to uplift. And yeah, it's horrible,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? It really
Yeah.
is. But at
Yeah.
the same time, I have to grow this institution and look at the diaspora and how I can be there for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I feel grateful for your book
Thank you.
and managing those two characters and their approaches
Thank you.
in a balanced way.
Thank
That
you.
really does say a lot for our time
Yeah. Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
right? Mhm.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that, Tabe. Yeah, I think that there is a lot of overlap between Washington and Du Bois, actually, and I think that they've both been reduced to that debate. You know, we don't
Right,
think about Washington beyond the Atlanta Exposition Address, right, in
right.
1895, and we don't think about Du Bois as he relates to Washington beyond, you know, the 1903 or the chapter on Booker T. Washington in The Souls of Black Folk, and what I tried to do was sort of bring the
Mhm.
sort of capaciousness and the diversity of Tuskegee's archive to the fore to demonstrate that, like, hey, even if, a Washington wrote and said more than that, right? And that,
Mhm.
and then B, um, even beyond Washington, we also have to look at the lives and experiences and the contributions of the people that that institution touched, right? Washington and his circle. So the contribution of someone like Margaret Murray Washington, right, his wife, or the Carver, right? The faculty that he hired at Tuskegee, right? Many of them, their political ideologies or their political commitments and personal desires did not always match up with Washington's, right? In the same way that our commitments don't necessarily match up with the people who whom we work for. You know, it's like I work at Duke, and so yeah, the university might have a public stance on something that I don't agree with, and so I wanted to sort of add complexity to these figures by understanding them within their context, within their time, but also for a person like Washington in particular, understanding that Tuskegee is also shaped by all of these other faculty and its students, right, as well, who have other political visions. And so, but yeah, just to come back to something you said initially, Savi, as it relates to Du Bois, we often think of Du Bois as a kind of urban cosmopolitan intellectual, but Du Bois spent so much of his career in the South, in Atlanta, working at Atlanta University. He went to Fisk, for undergrad, so he's not from the South, but he spent a lot of time here and wrote quite a bit about, was very interested in agriculture and vocational education. And in fact, in the 1930s, he is thinking about that as an important aspect of Black education. And so there are all of these moments where Du Bois's sort of political commitments align quite a bit with what Washington was attempting to do. I think the biggest or one of the biggest frustrations that Du Bois and Ida B. Wells and folks of that sort of ilk had with Washington was this idea of his being a race man and his sort of speaking for the entire race, having one project that that all of the race was supposed to then get in line for, right? And I think he would say privately that he didn't believe that that was the case, but the public messaging suggested that all Black folk, right, were supposed to get in line under this project, and that was their frustration because they knew, like I believe he knew, that it's not a one size fits all, option, and so I think that was at the heart of um, of Du Bois's frustration with Washington. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Gonna insert the question from the chat from
Oh,
Adama. With
yeah.
letting your imagination go free, what do you think would have happened if Marcus Garvey's work of creating an international Pan-African agricultural network had not been sabotaged?
Mm. Oh, that's such a good question.
Mhm.
That's a really good question. I think that one of the first problems there were lots of problems that they would have encountered that they would have had to work out among themselves, even if we just think about it in a kind of intraracial, setting, a diasporic setting. So, one of them is that they were going to have to figure out, you know, um, how different, how to deal with the unevenness, um, of where sort of different people in the diaspora were positioned, right? And uneven access to resources, right? Uneven access to capital, right? Like that was going to be a real problem. And I think, the other problem that they were going to really have to figure out was this idea of the problem of scale, right? What does it mean to even produce commodity or foods or commodities at this scale? I never saw a kind of attention to the ecological side of farming in the Garvey papers. Like I didn't really see any attention to that. And so what's the environmental impact, right? Like they were really going to have to go back and read Carver's bulletins about crop rotation, to ensure that they were taking care of the earth as they were trying to produce commodities at this scale. And so there's the environmental problem, but there's also the problem of labor. And I've not seen any example of anyone engaged in monocrop agriculture, of large scale agriculture that was not wherein labor exploitation did not become a problem. right? And so I think that those are just, I mean, let's put the kind of racial edge, as the question stated, let's put the problems of, you know, uh, um, uh, sort of racial oppression or racial subjugation or being undermined, right, by the U.S. nation state or by sort of European colonial powers, et cetera. Like let's bracket those, right, and just think about what are the problems that they were going to have to figure out among themselves. I think those are two of them, right? What does it mean to produce at this scale in terms of labor and the environment? And the other one is like how do we deal with, the tensions that emerge naturally when we're trying to engage in a sort of Black diasporic Pan-African project when people who are situated in different parts of the diaspora have different relationships and understandings about what their Blackness is, right? So right, and then but also um, how uh, folks who are positioned, say, in the U.S. might have uneven access to resources. I mean, one of the things I tried to draw out in the book is that, whereas, Black Southerners in the U.S. context were, a part of an a kind of an emerging global North because they're situated in the U.S., right? But many people who were in the who were from the British Caribbean would have had access to better education, actually, right? And so we have this unevenness that exists, and that's just one example that I think we would have had to work through. Not impossible, I don't think, right? But I think real tensions and I in some ways I understand too why these may not have been the first problems that they're trying to work out because there are larger problems that they're trying to address, and then once we address these larger problems perhaps then we can attend to the problems of how we relate to each other and also the problems of production, right, or farming at this scale. So those are just two issues that I think that they would have had to address that would not have been insignificant. Yeah.
Shay.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Jarvis. It's a pleasure to meet you. My name is
Likewise.
Ashay.
Sure.
Thank you. I'm on Muskogee land. I'm on Creek land. I'm in Opelika, Alabama, about a half an hour from Tuskegee. I am a daughter of Tuskegee. My son's a current student at Tuskegee. And I'm finding myself being very emotional right now.
Mm,
And I have a question around it. So I was introduced to Tuskegee by arriving there the day that I made a decision to go. I stepped onto the campus
oh wow.
without ever having seen it.
Oh wow.
And it was a love story from there. And there were many days it was difficult. But one of the things that comes up for me, and I was an English teacher for many years, and my co-teacher, I don't know if you know who Tishango and Billy Shaka is out of
I think so.
okay, he teach. We used to teach. Used to teach around Booker T. Washington, and the
Okay.
students would do debates and do the poems. And it seems to me he's a Booker T. Right? And being on that land as a 18, 17, 18, 19, 20 year old, then even returning back, I moved here to be closer to the school and do work there. It's a There's a spiritual journey there, right? When you think of, you get there and everybody's like, oh, and the bricks you're standing on were made by the students, and the buildings were made by the students. And we tell these stories. But it reverberates with that, right? It's
Mm.
like palpable. I'm wondering in your research, in your writing, in your studies, and even the pursuit of this, are there any stories that came up for you in the spiritual realm around how you
Mm.
related to the stories that you were giving voice to?
Oh, that's good. Yes, yes, absolutely. As a very spiritual person, I mean, I feel like this work is a reflection of that. And I've tried to distill it into the stories that I capture here. So that's a general yes, but I'll get into some particulars as well. And thank you so much for that reflection. There's a way that the story of Tuskegee is also the story of Tougaloo, my alma mater. And so And there's a way that I think I understood Tuskegee and the challenges of Tuskegee, especially in those early years when they're trying to transform it from a plantation into a school. I was profoundly moved by that because I knew the story, the history of Tougaloo. Tougaloo is a small HBCU in Jackson, Mississippi. For those of you who don't know, or just it's really Tougaloo, Mississippi. It's also, and a school that's named after the indigenous community that indigenous peoples that were once there. It's a word that means the place where two rivers meet. And it was established in 1869. And it was founded by the American Missionary Association, which is the organization that emerged out of, that formed in the aftermath of the Amistad Rebellion, actually, right? And so Tougaloo is, whereas, I opened the book with a kind of reading of that passage from Booker T. Washington, where he talks from slavery, where he talks about the fact that, he decided to establish Tuskegee on the site where the plantation had been burned, right? A plantation comes for sale in the market, and he decides to purchase that and decides that that's the place to establish a school. And I just remember feeling so many conflicting feelings about it. And on the one hand, it's like, well, why would you need to buy a plantation? Like why not, find some land that does not have that violence? But in many ways, in the United States, there is no land that is not, even if it wasn't a plantation, it was. It once belonged to or was once settled by, indigenous peoples. And so there's no land that is untouched by that history. And I think that it helped me to give the Tougaloo story as I sat with that passage. It helped me to give the Tougaloo story a bit more meaning, and to understand that this is not just something that we did, in Mississippi, but it's a Black diasporic story. So as I began to realize, like, wait a minute, all across the U.S., in the Caribbean, in Central America, Black folks have been transforming these sites, right? And it was a means of it was a very practical sort of a practice, I suppose, or strategy. The land had already been cleared, and it was land that was, available to them to try to build, future-oriented projects on top of. And so I think that, in engaging with understanding, or yes, engaging with that particular passage helped me to understand my own intellectual journey a bit more, and to feel connected to the broader Black diaspora, because I saw that we were all wrestling with what to do in the ruins, right? What to do with the ruins, right? What to do as people who were supposed to be ruined, right, by this institution, but were not, right? We persisted. So that's one way in which, engaging with the Tuskegee archive was a kind of spiritual, journey for me. Another way in which it was, spiritual for me was, you know, I didn't grow up planting. I didn't grow up gardening. I came to it through, by virtue of, like, it was the pandemic, and I purchased a home that where the previous owners had done a really beautiful job of landscaping, and I kind of wanted to keep up the landscaping, and so I kind of fell into it, right? And so, but those years after the pandemic, as I was really trying to finish the book, were very difficult because it was hard to write a book. It was my first book. I didn't know exactly how to tell these stories, and so I'm wrestling with it. And so what I ended up engaging in a great deal of gardening. I had the previous owners planted some banana trees that are still in my yard now. And so I went and bought a machete, right? And I was like, all right, I'm writing about bananas in this Claude McKay chapter, but I'm also out here, cutting down banana trees and figuring out how to take care of them, in addition to all the other, sort of flowers and plants that I was growing. And so I remember one day I was in my yard and I was, working, and I think I had maybe taken my gloves off, so that I could, really get into the soil. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, like this is exactly what I'm writing about. That this idea of planting is a lot like or this idea of plotting is a lot like planting, right? It's actually this sort of act of hope and faith that what you sow today will bear fruit at another time. Because I'm thinking, I hope these perennials come back, right? And when I was a new when I was a new plant dad, I would fret if something died. I felt like I had been, somehow I had been uh, um, a bad plant dad, right? If my plants did not come back the next year, right? And so I remember thinking like, oh, I need to write that down for the book. And so some of the theorizing from the book or some of the concepts from the book came from that spiritual act of like being engaged with the earth, of planting myself, of learning how to keep things alive, but also learning, being okay with this sort of experimental nature of it, that, it might not come back next year. Yeah, I have some things, right now, in the yard that did not come back. And so I have a different relationship to it now. So I'll stop there for now and just say that, those were two of the ways it helped me to understand my own history, right? Intellectual journey, but also, I found that work of gardening was restorative for me at a very stressful time of writing the book and trying and hoping that it became a book, right? And so the theory was informing the practice, which is quite Tuskegeean in a lot of ways, because they were at Tuskegee always trying to they were creating and innovating, I suppose, an educational method that they called dovetailing, wherein they're trying to demonstrate how what the students are learning in their trade classroom or on the farm is also what they're reading about and doing in the classroom, right? And so, in some ways, I was having a kind of dovetailing experience wherein the thing that I was trying to write about and theorize, right, in the book was what I came to that understanding through actually doing the work, right? So yeah, I'll stop there for now.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
So this is going to be the last question I ask, I promise,
No
even though
worries.
I wrote a lot down.
No worries.
I really just wanted to ask you all about your book for overnight.
Coming to Jamaica,
Okay.
Dana. He's
So
coming to Jamaica to see you. He's gonna
Yes,
be there in
so
June.
that's right.
so
That's right.
you the way, so it really is reading for me like a Bible. Like I'm spending
Mm,
time with it in a way that
mm,
um I guess I'm on a spiritual journey right now
yeah,
as a returning
yeah,
resident, or and I'm also kind of figuring out um Afro-indigeneity like in real time, like
yeah.
because it wasn't language that I think I had available to me because
Hmm.
I've been an immigrant my whole life.
Right. Right.
Um and I kept thinking like I feel like every immigrant who doesn't appreciate everything African Americans did during
Mm,
Reconstruction,
mm,
would this should be almost required reading for coalition building,
mhm, mhm,
because you use such care in not glamorizing things. I admire that so much. And one of the things that I felt like, can you teach a class on this? Because you
mhm,
did such an exceptionally brilliant job with gender. Like
mm.
it was just like a man wrote this. But it was like no,
Yeah.
it was the role modeling that I really I want lots of people to see
Mhm,
a Black man writing about gender in a way that's never salacious. It's never like you never and when you mentioned the piece about George Washington Carver and the rumors, like
mhm,
you just handled all of that discourse with
mhm.
such care in a moment where it feels like there's so much hostility
Right.
around that. And I just, in terms of your process
Yeah.
for how you approach that. Is that just like an innate ethic, or was it the what you were reading in the archives? I'm just really interested about that process and how we can get others to learn it.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm delighted to know that it landed well on your ears and on your reading. That really means a lot to me. I, the story of sort of Margaret Murray Washington and her speech on New Negro Womanhood was a part of the project from the very beginning. But I always knew that that there was more to say about gender, and I couldn't quite figure out how to say it, right? Because I felt like there were so many other mountains that I was trying to climb in the book, right? I'm trying to demonstrate that, Tuskegee is not backward. I'm trying to demonstrate that it's an aesthetic institution. I'm trying to demonstrate that I'm trying to write about a complicated figure and place, right? And so I just couldn't, I was like, I have this piece, on someone who she went by Mrs. Booker T. Washington, but Margaret Murray Washington. And I just remember thinking like, I want to say more, but I wasn't really sure how to. So I get my first set of reviews back, and one of the reviewers, of course, said, "You got to do more with this piece." And I was just like, "Yes, I know," but I wasn't sure how. And so I sat with her feedback, and I think she may have even made some recommendations. But then somehow, I think just maybe because I'd had some space from it, I realized, I said, "Wait a minute, there's so much about, there's always a chapter that's dedicated to women's education in all of the books that I'm reading about, right? There are all of these women who were in these, because I'd written about the women in the photographs, but a bit, and that was a part of the initial one. But I was like, wait, I actually think I need to make a section that really talks about, not only women, but gender in general. How is this institution engaged in in promoting a kind of proper gendered mode of conduct, right? That is thinking about masculinity and femininity, right, at the same time. And so I think like that prompting from the reviewer and the distance that I had from the manuscript at that time really allowed me to go back to it and say, right, of course, gender is not just about women's experiences. It's also about how the young men are being socialized, right, as well. And then I encountered. I mean, it came out at just the most appropriate time. Marlon Ross's fabulous book, "Sissy Insurgencies," where he writes about um, masculinity as it relates to Booker T. Washington and George Washington Carver. He's the person I'm engaged with in that section, mostly. And I thought, okay, I learned so much, from him about the way that they're being socialized and where they fit within sort of conceptions of Black masculinity at that period. I thought, okay, I have more there. There's so much more that I can do here, and I need to integrate this and make this a central part of the argument, even as I'm reading the photographs, that it's not only about the aestheticization of labor, but it's also about how these students um, are being instructed to perform certain gender roles and to transgress certain gender roles, right? This idea of these Black women students, Black girls and women working outdoors, right? And their resistance to that initially, I thought was really important. And again, that was always a kind of part of the narrative, but I think that reviewer saying, "I think there's more you can do here," prompted me to sit with it and really return to my archive. And I'm so grateful for that prompting because I always knew I wanted to say more, but I hadn't quite figured out how to unlock it yet. And so that was my process to doing so. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I so wish we would have scheduled this for
Uh,
2 hours.
uh,
I'm gonna throw it to Jerry because I know she's had her hand up a couple
Sure.
times.
Sure.
We have a little longer than 6 o'clock if people
Yeah.
want to do a couple extra minutes. But we'll throw it to Jerry for what may be the last question.
Sure, sure, sure. No problem.
I I didn't have a real question. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to make, I guess, a comment. One, I was really grateful for the book.
Thank
Like
you.
a Shay, I was unexpectedly emotional
Oh,
about all of,
Hmm.
I don't even know why. I think, I grew up in North Louisiana. My family has Black Native Central Louisiana roots, very, very rural roots. I
mm-hmm.
grew up idealized. No, not me personally. Booker T. Washington was idealized all around me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of our
Mm-hmm.
most prominent Black high schools is Booker T. You
Mm-hmm.
know, I grew up with elder men in my life, mostly veterans, talking so longingly and proud about just the existence of Tuskegee, whether they had
Mm-hmm.
seen it or not,
Mm,
you know, and was also surrounded by so many HBCUs,
mm,
you know, that people were driving us around so
Yeah.
that we could see that we had options
Yeah.
really close.
Yep.
And, you know, with the agricultural piece being the part that they were the most proud of,
Mm.
even while both of my parents were integrating schools in the state of Louisiana. So it was the both and. You
Yeah.
know, my mother was the first Black woman to do news broadcasts in the syndicated Arklatex, North Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas.
Yeah.
mm.
She's very light skinned, and so as soon as she debuted, they debuted the rest of their blacker reporters. But she, you know what I mean? She
Yeah.
still she got
Yes.
out there. You know,
Yeah,
she ran out there
exactly.
first.
Exactly.
And I left home to go to school, but not for, you know, I wanted to do things international,
Yeah.
not for lack of options at home. And so I think there has always been this core wound in me about
Mm.
um, thank you for centering the
Mhm.
the substance and the quality of Black thought and Black rural thought and influence globally. Because
Ooh.
I was a product of that,
Yeah.
but nobody told me that. And then I
Mm.
really matured in academic spaces that were built on the back of Black rural women and men,
Mm.
even while they were holding up other examples.
Mm.
You know, I didn't even know there was an issue until I got to Howard. And I was like,
Mhm.
what debate?
Mhm.
You know, a
Mm.
debate about what
Yeah.
in fact are we debating about?
Mhm. That's right.
You
Mm.
know, how privileged are you that you have the right to think about wanting to learn other things?
That's it. That's
Mhm.
it. That's
You
it.
know,
Yep.
and then anyways, I even for right now, I guess on the timeline collapse, some of the things I've been doing, you know, as a Black woman with Indigenous roots who
Mhm.
has done most of my professional career at HBCUs, I've taught at Tennessee State and Dillard universities,
Wonderful.
and then a few abroad in some African countries, um, even when they were kind of running from conflict.
Mm.
I see why I'm constantly erased,
Mm.
right? Indigenous knowledge bases, Black rural thought, agricultural knowledge bases. I come from a farming legacy. Nobody wants to acknowledge that.
Mhm.
You know, people act like I need some type of special farm credentials. And
Mm.
I'm like, what do you want? What else do you want from me?
Right.
But
Yeah.
the value of putting it down in the canon, I've never seen anybody acknowledge in print that Black studies privileges the North
Yeah.
and the East
Listen.
Mm.
and Europe.
Mhm.
But I went to graduate school in the UK. I've been, you know,
Mhm.
I'm a PhD dropout, you
Mhm.
know, from Tulane.
Mhm.
I've been navigating these things at real cost for the entirety of my academic career. And I know the value of a solid, small Black led model. And so you know, I wasn't even fully aware of the documentable influences on Garvey and
Mhm.
McKay,
Mhm.
but thank you for that. These are things that you know intuitively, whether you've dug through the archives or not. And
Yeah.
I've moved with this in these spaces while people are erasing me because they're taught to, in the
Yeah.
ways that we're often taught to erase ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, and then I went and got all of the pieces of paper, and then it didn't even fucking matter. Write
Mm.
that down. Anyways, I know I'm taking up everybody's time. It's deep gratitude for me. It's deep gratitude. There are already projects that I'm looking to apply to referencing this scholarship because it is published.
Yeah. Thank you.
You know, the space holding that continues, the coverage, the real coverage, being able to stand behind something that didn't dehumanize Black women in the text.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Yeah.
to say and with a comparative literary background, how impressive.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the labor, you know, on the fellow Deep South,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, academic product. You know, we showed up and everybody, you know, Mississippi and Louisiana were interchangeably at the bottom probably my whole life still to
Oh,
today.
yes,
And so
yes.
everywhere I got off
Yeah.
a bus, a plane, a train, I had it in my mind that you showed up here with, everybody's documentable bottom credentials
Mm-hmm.
and,
Yeah.
moved aggressively. I'm never in a room underprepared.
Yeah.
I didn't
That's
have
right.
to fight so hard to get there,
That's
you
right.
know?
That's
And
right.
so, anyways, it's
Yeah.
gratitude on behalf of
Thank you.
those of us who went through public education systems in Louisiana, in the state
Mm-hmm.
of Louisiana and
Yeah.
other states, knowing that people just in Texas, they need to have enough water to drink, but they have more books than us,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yes.
Anyways, deep gratitude to me. I'm a close my mouth.
No.
Big love, shout out to Tuskegee, all the,
Hey.
everybody holding it down. We've
Yeah.
been the truth. Thanks for putting it in print and making them publish it. I'll be teaching from it as often as I can.
Thank you.
We're going to stack comments and questions. Miss Annette will let you ask your question, and then Professor McInnis, you can wrap us up.
I'll make it very, very short, y'all. Thank you so much for this book, number one. And I'll make it quick. And number two, Fortune, when he was talking about the integration of farms,
Mm-hmm.
then I thought about the farm in Georgia that integrated in the 50s and 60s. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought this man was almost prophetic. And
Yeah.
I was on a Zoom call today about the Jubilee Justice Farm in Alabama, which is also come together, and their whole thing's about rice. But I just had that today. But
Yeah.
me being nosy, because I was a historian, still am kind of, sort of. But I went back through to see how many schools were built on plantations, because I got nosy being from
Yeah.
South Carolina.
Uh-huh.
And I found out, well, I knew Clemson was
Mm-hmm.
built on a plantation,
Right.
and I knew Farming. I did not know Francis Marion was built
Yeah.
on 2 plantations.
Was. Yeah.
And I read the book about Georgetown and the slavery and selling people. And I have a lot to say about Catholics and slavery and women's reproductive rights. We'll save that for another day. So I'm saying all that to say is I've also noticed from South Carolina State that where they're reinventing or re-emerging or redoing their 18 something, I can't remember the date, I'm sorry, 90 project.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like after reading your book that is kind of based on this Tuskegee model. Yeah, thank you, 1890s project. I can't remember now. Y'all, I'm old. And then I thought about South Carolina State and then the work they're doing at AT&T, because they often combine ag classes like on grant writing and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just thinking there's also, since we're losing Black farmers, but we're having such great groups like Dana's group, try to get us back to almost our ag roots. And I just have a small backyard farm, but I want a big farm. But so just this new, almost like a newness or something coming, bubbling up where we know we need our land, even if it's in your backyard. But I just had to say that. And thank you so much for writing the book. And I enjoyed it. And have a great week.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing, Jarvis?
Yes, please, please. Yes.
I just want to say that until Dana took us to University of West Indies, Mona, and having read your book and knowing that University of West Indies, that Mona sits on a farmer plantation, it blew my mind, because then I began to be able to understand, Dana, all this oppressiveness about Kinston and the Heights, the people up on the Heights, the people down in the valley, and what is needed for liberation. And I would not have been able to ground it like that had I not read your book. So my mission in life is to make a ton of money so I can paste this book all over the world.
Please and thank you.
Look, we are the group that will spread it like the good news.
Time to do more of it. So thank you so much. We so appreciate you.
Thank you. Well, I have to say, y'all, I am moved and heartened by this feedback. It is was it Jerry who asked? No, someone asked earlier about what was spiritual. This is spiritual for me. So thank you
Yes.
so much to know that the book connected with you in this way. It means so much. And Savi, to your point, yeah, it's in the landscape, right? The inequality,
Yeah.
right, is
Yeah.
built into the landscape, right? And so I think when we have a better understanding of that, it gives us a sense of um, an understanding of how we got to where we are or why things are
Yes.
the way they are, but also like what we can do to try to intervene, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I think that's really, really important. And yes, I'm really interested. Someone mentioned the Jubilee Farm Rice Project in, I believe it's Louisiana.
Louisiana. It's
Yeah,
Yes,
in
it
yeah,
is.
Louisiana.
exactly.
Mhm.
So I'm really excited. I'm trying to, I actually am hoping to visit there, if not this summer, sometime in the fall, to do some
Nice.
interviews with some folks there. So I'm really excited about learning about that project. So I just wanted
Yes.
to
Yay.
um, to say that I'm it's a project that I have my eye on, and I'm excited about. And to the was it Jerry? I'm sorry, I was trying to keep track of who made the comment. Yes, Jerry. Thank you so much for your beautiful reflections and feedback. And yes, as a Mississippian who left Tougaloo and moved to New York City uh, for graduate school, I had that experience. When I would tell people that I was from Mississippi, people would stop breathing, right? And they would say, "Oh my gosh, like how did you, and all of their sort of biases and prejudices about Mississippi, would come to the fore. Now, as someone, who is a student of history, I understand why Mississippi circulates in the way that it does, and I don't apologize for it, but I also know, again, that Mississippi is not reducible to those parts, right? And that there's a lot of brilliance and goodness that comes from a place like that, despite its dark history, especially the Black and Indigenous folks, right? Who have been navigating, right, that history, and so that really is that was the impetus, right, for writing this book and writing it in the way. I mean, I had no intention to write about the South, right? I actually thought that I would be read as provincial. I thought that I would be, misread in all kinds of ways. But there's a way, again, to come back to the question about, I think it's Isha's question
Mhm.
about spirituality. It almost felt like a bit of a calling, like home was calling me to wrestle with it, and to try to
Mhm.
figure out my relationship to it, right? And so I wanted to demonstrate, I wanted to make an argument that recognize the fact that Black studies, that so much of Black studies is rooted in the urban North, the global North, and that we don't really have a lexicon for honoring and recognizing and grappling with the complexity and cultural sort of the intellectual sophistication, the cultural dynamism and complexity of the South, both U.S. and broader global Black South, right? And that the folks who end up in Harlem, right, are coming from where? They're coming from the Caribbean. They're
Mhm.
coming from
Mhm.
the U.S. South, right? And so we don't
Yes.
have a new Negro movement. We don't have a Harlem Renaissance without the brilliance and ingenuity, right, of global Black Southerners, right? And so I wanted us to be more honest about that, and to really grapple with and to try to break apart what I felt like is a very facile association between the South and, again, backwardness or provincialism or anti-intellectualism or violence even, right? And to complicate that and to say no, 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 there is a whole wealth of cultural and intellectual. There's a treasure trove, as someone put in the chat a moment, borrow that word. There's a treasure trove of contributions, right, of Black folk who are coming from the Caribbean, Central America, Latin America, the U.S. South, the broader Black diaspora, right, that we have to acknowledge and wrestle with. And just because it's not urban doesn't mean that it's any less significant. Just because it's not urban doesn't mean it's any less intellectual. And so that language of cultivating intellectuals of the land was a really important sort of concept for me that I wanted to impress upon readers, that rural does not mean all of these negative things that we associate it with. So thank you for sharing that part of the book, that part of the story that I'm telling here resonated with you so richly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think as we come towards close,
Mm.
you know,
Do we have
this,
to?
well, the man has other things to do. So he has a garden to tend, but I
Gotta get
just
out.
no, truly, when Savvy handed me the book,
Yeah.
I'm often gifted books because I love to read, and we have WTF book club partially because I think that so many of the love letters that we need for this moment of uncertainty, which to me is just a repetition on theme, is an
Mhm.
invitation for us to look at what we have, like what we as Black. I see us like we were reading Fanon, and I was like, I'm like revisiting Fanon at this stage of life. I
Yeah.
think part of why I was so drawn to African American farmers, because as I've been doing that work, I didn't really realize that it's also my family story. Like I just was like, I believe Black farmers figured out the plot of America, and they know they're like magicians, and like they're scientists, they're everything that we need to be listening to for this
Mhm.
particular moment in time.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's only very recently that I've started to understand that flow of information and knowledge and wisdom between the Caribbean and the Black South. And I feel like this global Black South framing
Mhm.
feels like exactly the way we're talking about reparations here,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways, is like remembering our ancestral legacies and remembering our spiritual relationships to land, because we don't need Europeans for that, right? Like we can take it upon ourselves to reconnect with our siblings, from around the world. And I think that I just want to continue to like bless and pray and send all of the good that there is to you for having this gift of um writing. I mean, it's a textbook. Like, I mean, like it's like
It's a
it's
big
like
book. It's a
textbook,
big book.
but it does something for the culture that I have been naming as like there's this call from the earth that is like it's been, like slowly since COVID, it's been getting a little bit louder. It's been getting a little bit louder. And like each circle that I'm in, I'm finding this book as a way to like translate some of my weirdness into like words that other people can kind of catch on to. So, I just hope that your book continues to be successful, your career, your writing, your research, your teaching. You're such a treasure. You're such a gift and a blessing to our community. And I'm honored that you made time to come to our little book club. And and yeah, I'm just full of so much respect and admiration for you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I, I'm almost speechless right now. So I don't know that I'll have much that I'll be too articulate, but I will just say this. This is my last, like kind of real book event for the spring semester. And I can't imagine a better way to have ended, this sort of part of the journey. There will be more things, in the fall or whatever, but my goodness, what a wonderful way to cap what has, been a really wonderful ride thus far. But to hear from you all, I am moved really, really beyond words. Thank you doesn't really capture what it is that I want to say. So, but just know that when I say thank you, that it is imbued with lots of other feelings of gratitude and mutual admiration also for the work that you all are doing. So, thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate
And
it.
a bottle of rum.
And listen, yes, please. And a
Well,
bottle of rum. There we go.
that's
Yes,
right.
yes. That's it,
Thank
Sally.
you.
Thank you all. Thank
Right.
you all. Okay.
And
Thank you
that,
all
thank
so,
you.
so, 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 so much for being here. I also plugged my current research home, which is the State of African Americans in the Black Belt, which is at Tuskegee University's Carver Integrative Sustainability Center. We're actually dropping a new report soon that is talking about the economic impact of HBCUs, so keep an eye out for that one. There's a bunch of other reports on there that you can look at. So Tuskegee is still doing the work. Still doing the work.
Yes.
So, Professor McInnis, I cannot even begin to explain how grateful I am for you for being here. Who would have known a little moderation at the African American Legacy of Gardening and Horticultural Symposium would have did this? But
You
yes,
were brilliant there, by the way. So
thank you.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you, thank you, thank you.
yeah.
This is an open invitation. If you ever want to come chat with us, talk, you already see we will gladly have you for hours on end.
Absolutely.
I think the gratitude has been spoken, but yes, if we can all give Professor McInnis a round of applause for his wonderful time with us here today, and thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you all so much for having me. This has
Thank
really
you.
meant the
Tears
world.
in my eyes. Thank you.
No, likewise, Savi. Likewise, likewise. And if I can ever, please be in touch. I'm an email away. If you're in North Carolina or in the Durham area, holler at me. Or if you want to keep talking about something or thinking through something, please don't be a stranger. I'm grateful for each of you for being.
I need it more accessible to the masses because I went through trauma to get this book. Okay.
Oh, did you? What happened? What?
Right now I am economically challenged, so I was able to use the international the interlibrary loan
Okay.
system, and I
Yeah.
did prevail.
Okay.
However, I'm just saying, yeah, we need this more accessible and out there. Okay, bye.
So no. So I'm gonna put this. I mean, it's not a lot, but I'm gonna put this code in the chat. If you buy it from Columbia University Press, there is a 20% discount using that code CUP20. And on my, sometimes they'll do a larger discount, and I'll try to circulate that. I have not announced this yet, but it will be available eventually as an audiobook. So
Really?
that's also happening soon. So it will be more accessible, as for other folks as well. So if you want to, follow me on social media, I will be announcing it. And of course, this is me on Instagram, on Facebook, it's just Jarvis McInnis. This is Instagram and X, and then LinkedIn as well. So if you will follow me, I'll let you know when it will be available as an audio book, and then you'll have it'll have a whole other life in that way. So I know accessibility was a part about probably the price tag of this book, but also the discount code will be helpful. But also accessibility is about being able to read it or listen to it. So just know that is coming.
And I hope your
Right.
voice is reading it. Is that
Yes, thank you.
I
You are?
tried. No. I tried, but they would not allow me to do it for a whole host of reasons. But it is an African American man who is reading it.
okay?
So it's still someone who is in the
Okay.
community, who I think he's probably he's, I don't know how old he is, but he seems to be like kind of an elder or on his way to being an elder. So I think he'll be able to identify with many of the ideas and experiences that are articulated here in the book. And so that was really important to me that it be someone from our community who is reading it, and that is the case. So I felt like yeah, right, and it's not an AI reading, no one
Okay.
from AI reading it. No, it's an actual narrator. So I'm really happy about that.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Okay, all right, y'all. Well, thank you all for having me, and again, don't be a stranger. I appreciate it. Okay,
Bye, friends.
okay, bye bye.
Bye-bye.